Hitler Reagan is tedious and far from my favorite subject. But if I have to, I'm not going to take any precautions and back up this talk. I could probably do it again. Because when all is said and done, he was around for some time. He lived to be pretty old. And his despicable nature was so obvious I didn't become much of a researcher about him for a really very long time. He was a personality called dictator of criminal psychopathy, beholden to the military psychosis in America, Red Scare Hollywood with all its weird sci-fi horror stuff, and General Electric. He was a wax museum dummy in that way, like the Beatles are. But because I first heard his name when Joan Baez, whose voice was as shrill as her politics, whinged something about him being a leader of the KKK at Woodstock, I assumed that it was widely understood that he was a barbarian. I was not impressed by him in the slightest. His doofbaggery struck me as as though he was put together on the set of a stupid movie to play the villain. He was a kind of Eddie Haskell. If you don't know who that was, he was from Leave It to Beaver Cleaver. He was a con man who would charm the folks, as he called them, and then give Wally Cleaver the business, which was meant giving one of these in the ribs about his red Studebaker. Okay, so Hitler Reagan, I researched when I realized how bizarre he really was. I've done some homework on him, but in those days I didn't pay much attention. He was one of the, I was only 12 years old, and he was one of these typhoon weirdos from John Wayne country who comes out of the backwoods with a pitchfork in Night of the Living Dead movies. Pro Vietnam War. I mean, one of these. Who had nutbags with binoculars on the steps of East Liberty playing Kiss and smacking little boys who they wanted to make homemade, you they juiced for moonshine pedo films. People like Mancine, which is a snuff note, Manson Cinema. And the Vietnam vets who lived across the street from him, and that whole row of houses there in the East End, all pre-lorded by Gregory Carl, the Pope of the Enterprise. George Takei, no doubt, was licky chops collecting the black market Sotheby's stuff that they were going to turn into the walrus as time went by. I mean, I've researched the things that make obvious that Sinatra executed JFK, was in the Axis. I mean, it's all very, very obvious. Lee Marvin's films, The Killers, with Hitler Reagan, it's perfectly obvious. They justified it by themselves as saying, we're a platoon, we're the rat pack, he's not one of us, and so on. But and I just dismiss as moral retardation the idea that anybody could um, fall in line with his moronic idea that Jesus Christ doesn't care if we poison the earth. That was his contribution to American political psychology. that Jesus Christ doesn't care if we poison the earth. He has a whole swarm of people in the city of Pittsburgh who see it that way. They just see it that way. But I didn't really give it much attention. I mean, I was busy with other things. I was writing the Heaven and Hell Odyssey, as my mother points out, which was squashed by the people who were licking Reagan's boot, which Joni Mitchell turned out to be. I mean, Amanda Harcourt, an attorney for her, did more to roll out the red carpet, did more to service Hitler Reagan than any other human being, including George Bush, whose ninny she actually was. I didn't really give it much attention until a couple of people talked very openly at Pitt and in Pennsylvania and Temple and in Maine of being behind the AIDS attack. I said, look, what's going on is these people are talking openly about it. And they moved in with the so-called axis of resistance, which put up a huge wall of sound. No, the queers love Reagan. And it turns out it was this vampire, this weird, the weirdest thing in the world that a Texas queer should be wearing on his wrist as a bracelet was Donald Trump's favorite Japanese fiddle DD. And the whole script was about Midori Goto. And Tune told the queers, if you go along with the AIDS attack, we'll give you the pleasures of getting away with Michael Reagan's favorite scene some more, which was the Israeli Zionist becalking a 9-year-old son of a distinguished citizen of Poplar Bluff, Missouri. And he can't get away with calling himself a victim because Reagan knew. And Reagan's bigger than Poplar Bluff, Missouri by a mile. He's bigger, man. He's bigger. He's so big, he's almost as big as Pittsburgh. Can you believe it? The queer ball ain't going to get away with being becalked by Zionists when he's 9 years old. So John Baez was licking, lapping, lugubriously oscillating on the boot of Ronald Reagan the whole time. And nobody did more for him than Penis Gabriel and Paul McCartney. They rolled out the red carpet for Gail Burston, the girl who they claim killed him. They rolled out a red carpet for her. A mile long. It's one of those Penis Gabriel movies where the red carpet just keeps coming and coming and coming, as though it was born at the beginning of the universe and arrives at the end of the universe. For Hitler Reagan. Welcome, Hitler Reagan. Welcome, Hitler Reagan. So please don't talk to me about being disrespectful. Do not say respect and Ronald Reagan in the same sentence in my presence ever. I mean it. Don't do it. The motherfucker attacked my father, murdered him, and left a notarization of having done so on his death certificate, which would just happen to be published by the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. They started it. I'm not picking a fight with anybody. I sit quietly in a place where people are not supposed to engage in politics while some dumb mother wears a Ronald Reagan hat in my face. These people are with Clint Eastwood, who's a girl. He talks about, I'm macho, I'm a symbol of manhood. He's a gossip. He's a malicious gossip. Hell hath no fury like Clint Eastwood spurned. He's a woman. He has penis envy.